Newly discovered alien-looking predators, mysterious creatures building tunnel systems 5 miles deep, and creatures surviving on chemicals instead of food. These are ocean trenches with discoveries scientists can't classify. The Atacama Trench off the coast of Chile and Peru is one of the most isolated places on the planet. Scientists in 2024 sent down some equipment, expecting maybe a few little critters, the usual stuff that hangs around deep-sea trenches. Instead, they pulled up something they'd never seen before. It was only about 4 centimeters long, so pretty small, but it was an active predator. Most creatures down there are scavengers, waiting for food to drift down from above. But this little guy actively hunts. They named it Dulcibella camachanca. That second part of the name comes from indigenous Andean language. It means darkness, which is pretty fitting. When scientists ran genetic testing, they found this wasn't just a new species, it was an entirely new genus. That's a bigger deal than you might think. It means this creature is so different from everything else we know that it needs its own category. Scientists who found it basically said the discovery suggests there could be a whole bunch of other unknown life forms down there that we haven't seen yet. The Atacama Trench is one of the least explored trenches on Earth, and if something this unique turned up in their first serious look around, who knows what else could be down there. In 2019, Victor Vescovo made a dive to the absolute bottom of the Mariana Trench, 35,849 feet down, the deepest point on the entire planet. He was the first person to reach this spot in decades, and guess what he found sitting there in the most remote, untouched place imaginable? A plastic bag and a candy wrapper. But it gets worse. Scientists have been finding plastic at extreme depths all over the Mariana Trench. Now, researchers started analyzing sediment samples from the trench floor, and they found microplastics and significantly higher amounts than most other deep-sea sediments that they've tested. These plastics are breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces, and creatures down there are ingesting them. Mariana Trench is over 7 miles deep and very far from land. If plastic can make it there, well, then it's just made its way everywhere. And what effect is it going to have long term? We still don't know for sure, but it's hard to assume it'll be good. Now we head back to the Atacama Trench, which doesn't get as much attention as the Mariana, but scientists found something there that genuinely confused them. They pulled up sediment samples from deep down and analyzed them. What they found was polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs. These are industrial chemicals that were banned back in the 70s because of how toxic they are. So you'd think after 50 plus years, the amount in the environment would be dropping, especially in remote ocean trenches like this, but the Atacama Trench had some of the highest PCB concentrations found in any deep ocean sediment. The surface layer of sediment had especially high levels, which is the opposite of what they were expecting, because usually these pollutants settle deeper over time and the surface has less. Nobody can fully explain why the Atacama specifically has so much of it. There are theories about ocean currents funneling contaminated water from industrial areas, but concentrations still don't quite add up. Point is, it's not great. PCBs don't break down easily. Some of the creatures pulled from the Atacama Trench had PCB levels similar to animals living in some of the most polluted harbors and bays on Earth. Back in 1999, Japan sent down a remotely operated vehicle called Keiko to explore the Japan Trench. They ended up finding this community of life clustered around cold seeps, places where chemicals leak out of the seafloor. The main species was a type of clam called Thiocerid bivalve. At that point, nobody had documented them before. These creatures were running on what's called chemosynthesis. So instead of photosynthesis using sunlight, this is where chemicals like hydrogen sulfide and methane are the energy source. The clams and other creatures living there have these bacteria inside their bodies, basically farming them for food. And scientists have found even more of these chemosynthetic creatures in different Pacific trenches. Tube worms, weird white crustaceans, mollusks, and the tube worms can grow several feet long, and they don't even have digestive systems. They're entirely dependent on bacteria living in their bodies that convert chemicals into energy. In February 2025, scientists pulled up mud from 5 miles deep in the Japan Trench and ran X-ray scans on it. And what showed up in those scans shouldn't have been there. The mud was full of corkscrew-shaped burrows. Not random holes, they were spiral tunnels that something had deliberately dug. The X-rays also showed way more animal activity than anyone was expecting that deep down. For years, scientists figured the deepest parts of the ocean were mostly dead zones. maybe some scavengers, but not much else. These mud samples proved that wrong. Something down there was building tunnel systems, probably for shelter or hunting, maybe both. Nobody knows what's making them. The X-rays show the tunnels, but not what dug them. Maybe some kind of worm, maybe a crustacean we haven't discovered yet. The problem is you can't pull up mud without destroying the tunnels, so whatever living in them either escapes or gets too mangled to study. Think about what this means though. There are creatures down there actively building things. Scientists always thought the deepest trenches were basically underwater deserts. Research teams are already planning new expeditions to try and catch whatever's making these tunnels. In 2019, scientists caught some supergiant amphipods in the Mariana Trench and brought them back to study. Amphipods are basically those little shrimp-looking things you see all over the ocean, except the ones living in the deepest trenches grow huge. Some get over a foot long. When researchers looked at the shells of these things, they found something no other animal on Earth does. They were using aluminum to reinforce their exoskeletons, just loading their shells up with aluminum to make them tougher against the insane pressure down there. That's pretty bizarre because aluminum is toxic to pretty much everything. Most living things actively avoid it, but these amphipods not only tolerate it, they use it to protect themselves. Scientists think they're getting the aluminum from eating sediment off the ocean floor, but how they extract it, build it into their shells without poisoning themselves, and actually make it work is still mostly a mystery. And this seems unique to the ones in the trench. Amphipods from shallower water don't do this. Pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is over 1,000 times what we experience at the surface. Normal shells apparently aren't enough down there, so these creatures found a way. Most single-celled organisms are microscopic, bacteria, amoebas, that kind of thing, but the Mariana Trench has single cells the size of mangoes. Scientists found these things called xenophyophores, living 6.5 miles down. What do I mean by single cells? Their entire body is one cell, and these ones are 4 inches long, sometimes bigger. A normal human cell is maybe 100 micrometers across. These are about 100,000 times larger than that. How a single cell gets that big and doesn't just fall apart, especially with how high the pressure is down there, nobody fully understands. They build their shells out of whatever's lying around, sediment, minerals, debris, and they glue it together with something that they secrete. It's pretty cool. The problem is they're extremely fragile, which makes studying them really hard. When you try to bring them to the surface, the pressure change usually just tears them apart. Scientists need special pressurized containers, but even then, most of them don't survive the trip up. So a lot of what we know comes from taking pictures of them on the ocean floor or examining whatever pieces happen to make it back. What they eat, how they reproduce, how a cell that size even functions, most of it is guesswork. In 2023, scientists were exploring the Izu Agasawara Trench near Japan with underwater cameras. Over 27,000 feet down, they caught footage of a snailfish. That was the deepest fish ever recorded. Snailfish look pretty weird too. They're translucent and gelatinous with almost no bones. That helps them survive the extreme depths. The less solid structure you have, the less pressure can crush you. But even then, there's still a limit. Scientists think there's a depth somewhere around 27,500 feet where fish biology just stops working. And below that, even the toughest fish can't survive. So this snailfish was right up on that line. In the summer of 1997, NOAA's underwater microphones picked up a sound in the South Pacific that would become legendary. They call it the Bloop. It was ultra low frequency, insanely loud, and powerful enough that microphones over 3,000 miles apart both detected it. When scientists looked at the sound pattern, they noticed it had similarities to noises made by marine animals. The way the frequency rose and fell, but was way louder than any known animal could produce. Blue whales are the largest animals that have ever existed. Their calls can travel huge distances, but the Bloop was significantly more powerful, so it had to be a giant undiscovered creature, something massive enough to make a sound that loud. The Bloop became this internet legend that nobody could explain, but the NOAA finally came out with a fairly plausible theory in 2005, that it may have been an ice quake, where a massive chunk of ice broke off the Antarctic ice shelf. The sound travels through water incredibly well, especially at low frequencies, which is why it was picked up so far away. In 2014, underwater microphones near the Mariana Trench started picking up another sound, one of the weirdest ever recorded in the ocean. Scientists called it Biotwang because they had no idea what else to name it. It started with this low mechanical sounding moan and then suddenly jumped into these high-pitched pings and twangs. Nobody could figure out what was making it for years. It didn't match any whale calls we know of. It didn't sound like anything in the databases of marine animal sounds. Scientists knew it had to be a living creature, but that's all they really had. It took 10 years after those first recordings before researchers confirmed what it was in 2024. Bride's whales. These are baleen whales we've known about for ages, but apparently nobody had ever properly recorded this specific call they make. But why do they make this sound? One theory is it's a contact call. They use it to find each other across long distances, but that is just a guess. Nobody has proven what the call means, what triggers it. We've been studying whales for over 100 years. We have massive databases of their calls, decades of recordings, entire research labs focused on them, and we still don't know all the sounds they make. And I mean, think about how much of the ocean is out there that we're not monitoring. If something this weird slipped past us for that long, what else could we be missing? I've been your host, James, and we'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.